Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Public Safety Subcommittee public hearing on Warrant Article 10. My name is David Mark Goldstein. I'm the chair of the committee, and I'm here with subcommittee members Neil Gordon, Liz Linder, Jocelyn Murphy, Janice Kahn. Elisa will not be with us until 6 o'clock, and I'd like to welcome CTONS to the hearing. They're the sponsors of Warrant Article 10. And then at 6 o'clock, we will continue with Article 11. That'll be a joint public hearing with these two groups, and we'll take it from there. But right now, I'd like to turn it over to Ian. And again, thank you for coming. Floor is yours.
Yep, thanks. My pleasure. I think I know everyone on here, but just in case that's wrong, which I don't think it is, have taken the lead for CTO and S on this particular warrant article. So we have proposed what is now warrant article 10, which addresses section 2.2.1 of the general bylaws, which describes the qualifications for appointment to the advisory committee. The article would replace the existing restriction that an advisory committee member may not also be a member of any, quote, standing board or committee having charge of the expenditure of money, close quote, with a more precisely drawn restriction that an advisory committee member may not hold elective office of town government other than as a town meeting member or constable. As this subcommittee, I'm sure, recalls, Article 10 results from town meeting's vote last November to refer the subject matter of then Articles 11 and 12 to CTO&S for study and report. Again, as I'm sure the subcommittee remembers, those articles were prompted by town council's interpretation of the existing bylaw, an interpretation that would have disqualified at least two sitting advisory committee members from continuing to serve because they also held appointments to other town boards or committees. CTO&S, in its study and review, conducted several public meetings and one public hearing. I would say that we were guided by three core governance principles. The first principle being preservation of a separation of the town's legislative and executive branches of town government. The second being maintaining a separation of financial functions. And the third being eliminating ambiguity in language to the extent possible. As to the first principle, namely the separation of the town's legislative and executive functions, the advisory committee, as I'm sure this group knows and understands, is part of the town's legislative branch. It is authorized under state law to review appropriation requests, to submit a budget to a town meeting, and it has the authority to examine the town's books and records, all of which are in service of informing town meetings' legislative decisions. By contrast, the select board and the boards and committees operating within its executive structure are responsible for implementing and administrating appropriations, and they constitute the town's executive branch. There certainly is a fundamental a principle of having separation between the legislative functions and the executive functions of the town. In particular, holders of elective office, as distinct from just sort of members of committees, carry a direct and independent policy-making mandate that's conferred by voters, permitting our view an elected executive branch official to simultaneously serve on the advisory committee risks placing that individual in what we believe is an institutionally incompatible position, at once advancing executive branch priorities in their elected role and simultaneously purporting to review those same priorities objectively as an advisory committee member within the legislative branch. And so the restriction on elected officials serving on the advisory committee, we believe, preserves a clear and meaningful institutional boundary between the legislative and executive functions. The second principle we thought about was separation of financial oversight from financial administration. The advisory committee's functions, as I mentioned, includes reviewing, analyzing, and making recommendations on allocation of town funds. Other boards and committees may play roles in recommending or advising upon expenditures within their respective areas. But our view is few, if any, exercise unilateral authority over the ultimate expenditure of funds. We concluded that any concern that may exist over simultaneous membership can be addressed adequately through existing conflict of interest laws, disclosure requirements, recusal obligations, and simply the norms of transparent deliberation and open public meetings. The third principle that we've considered and thought of is the elimination of ambiguity. The existing language, namely, quote, any standing board or committee having charge of the expenditure of money, is ambiguous. Neither standing nor having charge of the expenditure of money is defined in the bylaws or in state law. Those phrases are subject to multiple reasonable interpretations, and the proposed revision, we believe, we hope, replaces the ambiguous language with language that's clear, objective, and easy to interpret and administer. And so for those reasons, probably others I'm not mentioning or have forgotten, happy to answer any questions. CTO and S voted unanimously in favor of the adoption of our proposed language under Article 10.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Before I open it up to the subcommittee, does anybody else on C2&S wish to say anything right now? Joe Callanan, do you want to say anything?
No, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody that has. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Janice, you're muted.
Yes, thank you very much. Ian, that was a really excellent explanation of what your charge was and what your conclusions were after studying. So thank you very much for that. I do have a kind of question that came to mind as you were speaking, which is the select board actually are able to vote at town meeting. The president does not get to vote in Congress. So I'm wondering about sort of the history of that provision that enables them to vote at town meeting.
So the short answer is I don't know the history. I'll give you a slightly longer answer, which is that the history of this provision, so this restriction was put into the bylaws in 1948, and it appears that the primary motivator behind this provision was actually select board members serving on the advisory committee. And there had been a few attempts before 1948 to address that were unsuccessful, and then in 1948 it was successful. And so the voting of select board members at town meeting is a function of the bylaws. There's nothing, there is no restriction. But this advisory, I don't think I know this advisory committee restriction, which we are now sort of making a little bit more clear, was originally specifically motivated because of the presence of select board members on advisory committee.
Thank you.
I can actually add to that history-wise. Before we became a representative town meeting, and especially in the colonial days, they'd start the town meeting, and the first thing of business that they would do would be to look for people to serve selectmen at the time.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
the meeting would then vote people into office for a year. So they've been voting. They were town meeting members who would also serve as selectmen with town clerk.
That's true. Yeah.
We went to a representative town meeting. They'd been, 200 whatever years, so they just kept on voting. Always that in Framingham, it's either Natick or Framingham. They don't vote. They don't speak. They sit on a table on the side very quietly unless a specific question is asked at town meeting, which I think is a marvelous way to handle that. Gordon,
Yeah,
sorry.
thank you for, and just for a little bit more context. I wasn't around when we were the first town in the Commonwealth to switch from open town meeting to representative town meeting. But I will say this, if you look at the Mass General Law as it relates to representative town meeting, you can start with open town meeting. Any voter, right, comes to town meeting and casts one vote at town meeting. And it matters not who you are, you just have to be a registered voter in the town. The transition of that to representative town meeting retains almost every aspect of open town meeting, except that you have to elect representatives because it's just too unwieldy, right? And so look at all the things that town meeting members elected by, their voters in their precinct are not subject to campaign finance, not subject to the ethics rules, not subject to the open meeting law, and so on and so forth, as voters would not be. And nothing prevents a voter of any sort from voting at town meeting. And I'm not sure it would be legal to take away in an open town meeting a vote from a select board member just by virtue of their select board. That may be context for why we have this sort of hybrid little bit of crossover between the executive branch and the legislative branch. It's not just not a pure divide. Yeah, other than that, Ian, thank you for that presentation. I'm actually one of the poster kids with a arguable conflict. I sit on the Taxation Aid Committee. We actually give away to deserving applicants a little bit of town money. We're not a policy board. And what I said when the relevant articles came up last time before they were referred, I think that to the extent that there is a perceived conflict, a policy conflict, you can't be on this committee and that committee for whatever reason, I think that's something to be handled by the appointing authorities. The appointing authorities are in every case either the moderator or the select board. I don't know there are any other cases. And I think those sorts of conflicts can be handled, by elected official appointing authorities, and woe be them if they make the wrong decision and have to explain it to the voters.
Janice, did you have another question or?
Well, your history is one I remember that back in the day, town meeting members chose the leaders of the town. So I remember that now. But I still don't know. So why is it only town meeting members or constables? Why not the other elected officials in the town? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and that's a topic that we discussed at CTO&S, and I think the view was that each of the other elected positions within the town do have direct executive policy making and financial authority. And so they are in the same category as the select board, although maybe to some extent, to a lesser extent, if that phrase makes any sense. uh, and so they also would be, you know, sort of falling into the category of having executive and exercising executive authority by virtue of a mandate of an election by the by Brookline residents, Brookline voters, and would in essence be reviewing their own work as a member of the legislature. It's our own local version of what we see commonly at the federal level, which is, if a senator or a representative is put into the cabinet, they resign from the legislature and they join the executive branch.
But we don't make school committee members leave town meeting if they're
Right.
you know.
Right. This is just the advisory committee, which is a much more pointed body to advise town meeting, not town meeting generally. Correct.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Also gives us a little more independence, not having other town officials mixed in with that. Jocelyn.
Thanks, David, Mark. So of course, I am the petitioner of warrant 11 in the special town meeting in November, largely because I found myself in the awkward position of having to choose between continuing to be a trustee of the cemetery after 25 or 30 years and a member of the advisory committee. And so I filed the article because I disagreed with town council's opinion, but I really wanted an opportunity to clear my name because when I was joining this meeting, I think I heard, maybe Joe can correct me, I was just tuning in and I think I heard him say that because I'm in a butter of the cemetery, I can't serve as a trustee. But of course, that's not the Ethics Commission's opinion. So if that's what I heard, I disagree. I believe the
No, he didn't
Ethics
say that.
Commission.
He said nothing.
Okay,
nothing
I
like
couldn't
that.
tell what he was saying
No.
because
He was
I was
just saying
just
you had
tuning in.
no. He said you had a financial interest in the property, just as I not financially, just as I would have a financial interest if, as a ZBA member, making a decision on an abutting property to mine. So he had said nothing about abutters are deemed to have a financial interest or a vested interest relating to a decision on land abutting theirs, which is why they have standing to make comments. So that was the point, nothing having to do with your membership.
Okay, but I'm in a butter of the cemetery. In any event, I thought I heard that because I'm in a butter, I can't
No.
participate as a trustee. If I didn't hear that,
Yeah, absolutely.
very good. Thank you.
Nothing like that.
Asking for some clarification.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to add, I think this is a really good result. I appreciate the work of CTO&S, which has clearly taken a really in-depth look at these issues. And I fully support the decision or the article that's being presented. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other members of the Public Safety Subcommittee wish to comment? Do you want me to stop sharing, or do you like having it up here so you can see the language? Okay.
That's, I've got the warrant in front of me as well.
All right. I have no questions. I really appreciate the depth that CTO&S took in their reasoning on this. It seems like a very simple and elegant solution here. I thought originally that the solution we came up with would be a lot more complicated, but this is beautiful. Are we ready for a vote if nobody else has any comments? Does anybody from CTO&S or Joe Callanan have any last comments before we go to a vote?
Other than David Mark, to apologize, I said 15 minutes and it's taking 21 minutes, so that's my fault.
I was going to point that out to you after we stopped the recording, but all right. Okay, so can we get a member of the subcommittee to?
Sure. I'll move a recommendation of favorable action on Article 10 as printed in the warrant.
And I will second.
Thank you very much. We have to have a roll call. I am going to stop sharing so I can see the people that are here. All right, on the roll call, there's a motion for favorable action on our warrant Article 10. Liz Linder.
Yes.
And Danelle O'Neill.
Yes.
Jocelyn Murphy, I assume you're going to abstain?
I'm going to vote yes.
Okay, you're going to vote yes. Janice Khan,
Yes.
Neil Gordon.
Yes.
I will vote yes too. It's unanimous.
I just want to say, to the extent the meeting went over, blame it on the roll call requirement.
Thank you all very much for all your work, and the main deal of the night, Article 11 will come up in about 8 minutes. So we're going to take a break for 8 minutes to allow Rebecca and the others to come into that meeting.
Is that meeting this meeting?
Yes, it's the same Zoom sign-in, same meeting. So this is going to stay open and continue. At least that's what Lisa told me. So I hope nobody's waiting in another waiting room in another meeting. I will check on that while we're taking a break.
Is the recording continuing even though this particular meeting